Who or what is the Duke?
Who or what are you?
Even I can't quite answer that.
It's not clear, as there's no real evidence in-game of his origins, but I do have a few ideas. In Resident Evil Village, Ethan Winters is alone, fighting back the hordes of evil werewolves. And when the last of the villagers dies, and after meeting the area's movers and shakers, it feels good to see another friendly face, no matter the size. Oozing out of the carriage,
I've been waiting for you, Mr. Winter.
dripping out of his clothing like warm butter on flapjacks, the Duke introduces himself as the Duke. He dresses like an aristocrat. He may be of some royalty. He says anybody who is anybody knows who Ethan Winters is, which leads me to believe he was at the meeting in the shadows or he has some outside connections. Look at him, you can tell he isn't human. This isn't the result of too many candy bars. He just might be a Kado experiment. The Duke is disguised as a humble merchant who has a mysterious background that may be rooted in something more sinister than we could imagine.
It's a baby!
One thing that baffles me the most is that he's able to assist an outsider by giving him weapons and information that only a resident of the village would know.
What the fuck is this?
In contrast, every other person Ethan meets is more standoffish
Who's this?
Friends.
Stay there.
and reluctant to help him. This is obviously due to Mother Miranda's influence. But the Duke somehow was able to grab newspapers, sell them to the villagers, informing them against Miranda's wishes. Which may be how he met the original merchant. They may have crossed paths and traded at some point.
What are you buying? Just something an old friend of mine used to say.
The Duke knew the repercussions of helping outsiders, but he still does it. Most of the villagers believe Miranda is a god and is somehow omnipresent, and somehow just speaking to an outsider they would be punished. Their fears have merit, as we see Miranda can appear anywhere, almost at any time. We don't see how she does this, but one thing I notice is when she appears in a swarm of crows and vanishes in a swarm of crows. The village is full of crows. Any one of these could be her watching and waiting to shapeshift and destroy. The point is, the Duke knows this, which makes him either really brave, really strong, or just downright really stupid. I wanted to test him out, so I decided to unload some explosives. He ate those explosives like candy treats. So maybe even Miranda knows not to try him. That's one idea. When we see the Duke again, he's behind a desk in Castle Dimitrescu. I find that peculiar, because the castle was locked down behind Ethan, so how did he get in? What's worse is he's locked in with Ethan while 4 starving women are running around. To them, he's not looking like a snack, he'd be looking like a feast, a Thanksgiving-sized feast. Now, this is a wild idea, but hear me out on it. I had a conversation with a friend about the Duke. I explained that I don't think the Duke is really there, like he's not a real person. There's no spoken dialogue in reference to him by anyone else in the game, so I thought about Resident Evil 7. In Resident Evil 7, there was a scene where dead Jack and Zoe Baker were talking to Ethan. Well, Jack was. He was giving instructions to Ethan somewhat, so I figured, what if, over the years, Ethan learned to tap into his version of the Metamycete records and is able to use them like a library to access at will? You know, like the kid from Lemony Snicket's. Oh, I need to modify my gun. No problem. Fake Mia used this ability while she was cooking local recipes. Well, at least that's what I think happened.
hands off, miss.
The problem with this idea is that Ethan gets tangible items and weapons from the Duke. Also, where would he put all the stuff that he's selling to himself? Then at the end, when Ethan is almost dead, how does he put himself in a carriage and drive himself to Miranda? Wild, I know. But a second playthrough, I realized that there was a note saying that there was a business meeting at the castle, so there is a little reference to the Duke. Every time we run into the Duke, he's in a location he can't really physically fit in. What's even worse is he's always in a compromised position. What I mean by this is if danger presented itself, he doesn't have the feet for running away. He's a sitting duck in all of the Lord's locations except for Donna, which I believe this was his room originally, But if this was his room, Donna would just take his weapons away from him too, and maybe all his other goods too. I've played through this game a lot now, and for the first time, I noticed that there was a rug with an image of an owl in the back of his carriage. There is something underneath written in French that Google translates to "money makes the right." I did a little research, and most people believe that there was a fifth house. I mean, I myself went back through the game with a fine-tooth comb to see if I can find anything that will point us to the mysterious fifth house. I did notice near Rose's crib, there was a book turned to a page that had an owl on it. I made my way downstairs, and I saw this on the TV screen. It kinda looks like an owl. Is this a clue that the owls are watching over the winters? I mentioned that Miranda comes and goes in a swarm of crows. Could the Duke transform as well? Is that how he gets to locations where Ethan is, and sometimes even before him?
Does this look familiar to you?
I did mention that somehow he's in areas he can barely fit.
No.
I tried to look into the skies and see if there was anything other than a crow up there. I was looking around in the meeting to see if I seen a silhouette of a owl by any chance. This is a wild guess, but all the lords have a secondary form except for Donna. Poor Donna. There has to be an explanation of how the Duke knows everything that's happening and even how things happened. Like he's there at every encounter with the lords. Even if he's not an owl, even if the owl is just a symbol like the other lords, I think we all can agree that he has another form. I know it's not popular, but I don't think he's part of another house or even another organization. Think about this for a second. Who knows the lords better than anyone? Miranda. The Duke wasn't created by some outside force. He was simply created by Miranda to carry out her will. So why would Miranda purposely help Ethan? Well, she had Rose, and she started the experiments for her daughter in the first place. Rose was the best candidate to be a perfect vessel. Why do you think she would pass out Rose's body parts to the lords like worm bait to fish? She led Ethan right to the four lords. She could have started that ceremony way before Ethan made it deep into the village. It's like she didn't want to get her hands dirty, so she led Ethan to the slaughter. Via the Duke, he supplied Ethan with everything he needed to get the job done. In some instances, he flat out was guiding him to where he needed to go.
There's a house with a red chimney on the western side of the village. Go and seek out the man who lives there. Then we can continue our conversation.
I know the Duke is a well of knowledge, but he got that intel from a being that lived for centuries. She's a master manipulator. She was able to find and get Mia without Ethan even knowing. I mean, if she wanted to, she could have lived a full life with him and just waited 9 months. Okay, that's not funny. It's sad because Heisenberg knew this.
Listen, Ethan, you're being played.
He knew his mother wanted to get rid of them, and Ethan was the instrument of death. When Carl dies, Ethan's job is done, and in parallel, so is the Duke's. Maybe it was at this time that the Duke broke free from Miranda, like Lucas did from Evie, and decided he didn't want to be discarded. There was too many delicious meals to be had. Another possible scenario is the Duke was collecting the mold from Ethan to return it to the Metamycetes records, and he was collecting Ethan's body when he discovered he was still alive. And then at that point, he decided to break free from Miranda. Everything that I'm saying is speculation. There's no real concrete information. It just feels like Miranda took steps to destroy evidence of her experiments.
You fulfilled your purpose, Mr. Rose. You disposed of my false children and awakened the glorious Metamycetes.
Even if it meant killing people who loved and looked up to her. Not the most exciting conclusion, but it does play into Miranda's character.
Do be careful not to waste your ammunition.